not to raise taxes on working people. With Reform UK promising additional welfare benefits, could any party now pledge to cut public spending and hope to win an election? My panel will debate that. National security advisors from Europe, Ukraine and the United States met yesterday to discuss how an end can be brought to the war started by Russia. The Ukrainian president has refuted Donald Trump's claim that a ceasefire agreement would involve swapping territories. Former MI6 chief Sir Richard Dearlove will brief me. The number of authors choosing to self-publish has skyrocketed in recent years, with tens of millions of books now being sold online since Amazon introduced the opportunity in 2007. Author Simon McCleave will describe his experiences. The Justice Secretary claims that new legislation can make a radical change, allowing the immediate deportation of many convicted foreign criminals. After more than 26,000 migrants have arrived on small boats in the United Kingdom this year, former Attorney General Sir Michael Ellis will give his reaction. And now first, your latest headlines from Aaron Armstrong.
Thanks, Michael. A very good morning to you. Our top stories. Almost all foreign criminals will be deported immediately when they receive a custodial sentence. Ministers say the planned changes for England and Wales will save the taxpayer an average £54,000 a year for each prison place. If passed, the new legislation could be applied to those already in prison, meaning deportations could begin immediately, although murderers, terrorists and those on life sentences will have to serve their full term in the UK. The proposal by the Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, goes further than a change into the law, which is due to come into force in September. Conservatives have accused the government of taking a soft-touch approach that isn't working, but Labour Minister Alex Davis-Jones says the government's clamping down on loopholes in the law.
We've been very clear as a government, the Home Secretary and the Lord Chancellor, that we feel like Article 8, which is the right to a family life, is being abused currently. We need to tighten that up, and we are looking at just exactly how we do that. We are, of course, ready for any legal challenges, but we believe that this policy is robust. We are doing the right thing here by the British taxpayer, by the British citizens, and we are ensuring that we are committed to their plan for change and doing what they think is right.
Police say 474 people were arrested during yesterday's demonstration in support of Palestine Action. Of those detained, 466 were for supporting the group, which has been banned under anti-terror laws. Police took action when dozens of people simultaneously unveiled handwritten signs opposing genocide and supporting Palestine Action, which was prescribed in July. The charity Amnesty International has described the mass arrests under UK terrorism laws as deeply concerning. 3,000 riot police were deployed across England and Wales yesterday amid ongoing protests outside hotels housing asylum seekers. Anti-migrant protesters scuffled with officers in Nuneaton as rival groups staged demonstrations in the town as tensions run high over the alleged rape of a 12-year-old girl. Protests were mostly peaceful between rival groups, like this one in Bristol, although a number of arrests were made in Nuneaton, Canary Wharf and Epping. It comes as new figures reveal 435 people crossed the Channel yesterday, bringing the total number of small boat migrant arrivals to more than 26,000 this year. The White House is considering inviting Volodymyr Zelensky to a meeting between Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin to discuss the war in Ukraine. It's understood the US president is willing to make it a trilateral meeting, but for now it remains just him and the Russian leader, as requested by Vladimir Putin. Ukraine's European allies, meanwhile, have reiterated their support following a security meeting hosted by the Foreign Secretary David Lammy and the US Vice President J.D. Vance yesterday, saying the path to peace cannot be decided without Kyiv. Well, Volodymyr Zelensky has rejected Donald Trump's suggestion that any deal will involve swapping of territories, but Conservative politician Sir Geoffrey Clifton Brown says Ukraine may have to accept that as part of negotiations.
I think some territory swap is inevitable, given that Russia now holds quite a bit of Ukraine. Inevitably, at least on some form of informal basis, Russia is likely to want to occupy that bit that it holds. The idea of NATO membership, I would have thought, would be a complete anathema to President Putin, so I doubt that'll be part of the deal. In fact, I would think totally the opposite. Whatever the peace deal is, there will be peacekeepers in what remains of Ukraine, and I suspect the deal will be that they will not be allowed to join NATO.
The UN Security Council will hold an emergency session later to discuss Israel's plan to occupy Gaza City. The Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres, says Israel's proposal to expand its military operation is a dangerous escalation. The Security Council meeting, which was requested by 5 European nations, including the UK, has been endorsed by all members except the US and current chair Panama. It was originally scheduled to happen last night. Firefighters in Dorset say they've brought a wildfire at Holt Heath near Wimborne under control. The crew of more than 100 saved one property from the blaze, which started yesterday morning. A major incident was declared and 20 homes evacuated. Finally, the last newspaper street vendor in Paris is to receive one of France's highest honours after walking the streets of the capital for 50 years.
Breaking news. Monica Lewinsky is pregnant by Trump. She's got twins. Oh, yeah.
Well, Ali Akbar has been using humour to sell dailies on the terraces of Parisian cafes since 1973. Now he's to be officially recognised for his contribution to French culture. The President, Emmanuel Macron, will decorate Mr Akbar with the Order of Merit next month. The veteran says he could sell 30 copies of Le Monde on a good day. Before the internet, he says it was almost 3 times as many. Those are your headlines. I'll be back with more in just under an hour's time.
Take the GB News family with you on any device. As long as you have an internet connection, tune into GB News anywhere on the planet or beyond.
Thank you, Aaron Armstrong. The Bank of England's decision to cut interest rates, despite inflation being well above target, suggests that it believes that the British economy is struggling. A think tank says that the Chancellor must raise £41 billion in extra tax to fill the gap in the public finances. The government recently abandoned its attempt to rein in benefit spending following a backbench revolt. Labour's manifesto promised not to raise taxes on working people, but the Prime Minister wouldn't repeat the pledge recently. Those looking for lower taxes won't be encouraged by Reform UK's pledges to extend welfare benefits. It makes me wonder whether any party can now pledge to cut public spending and hope to win a general election. Joining me now is my panel, Assistant Content Editor at The Spectator, William Atkinson, Telegraph journalist Michael Murphy, and former chair of the Labour Party, Baroness Hayter. Welcome to all of you. William, what do you think? Is it now impossible to imagine a party proposing to cut taxes and justifying that by saying it's going to cut public spending in certain areas and hoping to win a general election? Is this now kind of irreversible, the path we're on?
Well, I hope, from the sort of sake of the national finances, that it isn't. But I think what we're dealing with here are what sort of Peter Jay and Samuel Britton wrote about in the early 1970s, the economic contradictions of democracy. The fact that sort of reconciling sort of fiscal prudence with the demands of the electorate for ever greater spending is incredibly difficult. And of course, what happened in the 1970s is that you end up with the Callaghan government going cap in hand to the IMF because they couldn't simply sort of borrow enough to keep the sort of spending demands they had, and then having sort of fiscal prudence forced on them by sort of external events. And this has happened, to pretty much every Labour government except Blair. And I think that is the only way that you're going to have a situation in which public spending is actually cut. I think the problem is, of course, is, as you say, making this pitch to the electorate. As we see with Reform at the moment, their essential pitch is to sort of marry the sort of Thatcherite instincts of Farage in terms of cutting taxes with this sort of promise of an ever-expanding welfare state. And that simply isn't credible. And I think it's very difficult because voters, unless they see that the country is in some form of crisis, will never be able to bring themselves to vote to make themselves worse off, at least in the short term. And especially for a government like this, where the vast majority of Labour MPs came into politics to oppose austerity, I think it's very difficult for them to then reconcile themselves to the government, which is being forced by the OBR, by the markets, etc., to cut spending in future.
But your answer, if I may say so, is rather one-sided and reflects the times we now find ourselves in. I mean, after all, in one election after another, the Conservative Party thought that promising people lower taxes would lead them to believe that they would be better off. You now make it sound as though the option of promising lower taxes simply doesn't convince people or doesn't interest people. You seem to believe now that people are only interested in higher public spending, and that's the way they see themselves as being enriched.
No, I think voters are sort of interested in having lower taxes. I mean, wouldn't everyone? Because we all want the sort of government to be as sort of efficient as possible and therefore reduce its burdens upon us. But I don't think that voters believe that politicians are actually going to sort of lower their taxes, because, as you say, Conservative government after Conservative government has been elected, especially since the turn of this century, promising to sort of lower the tax burden, and then each time the tax burden has continued to inexorably increase, and it's increasing because, you know, the biggest spending commitments we have, the NHS, pensions, the welfare state, etc., are expanding at a rate higher than that of the expansion of the economy as a whole, and that is because we have an ageing population. And until basically we can find a way that we can say to our sort of gerontocratic electorate that you're going to have to accept that the pension age is going to raise, or that you're no longer going to get to the triple lock, or any other major cut in public spending, any government that is elected on the promise of lower taxes is going to fundamentally be unable to deliver them.
Diane Hayter, the first part of William's answer made me think a rather gloomy thought that I've had for some years now, which is that really a democracy may be doomed. And for this particular reason, that it's turned out that what democracy consists of is one party competing with another to promise the electorate to spend more of the electorate's money. And that seems now to be the way that one wins elections. But we can see that that does eventually lead to doom. I mean, you know, people on the left may think it's further down the road than people on the right, but it leads to doom eventually. What do you think?
It's very interesting. I mean, I think, you're going to immediately to the two parties. I think what we have to do between us, and you and I come from, the opposite sides of what were the two big parties, need to carve out, it seems to me, one or two areas over which we do not dispute. And those are obviously things like defence. I think it's social care and the NHS. Now, this is a big jump for political parties that fight each other at the election. But actually we have to do that, and we have to jointly explain to people that if they want all these things, if they want to have pensions, if they want to have a better health service, if they want good education for their children or grandchildren, that has to be paid for. And I do think that as politicians, we have a role now to jointly spell out some of that and leave our dispute, if you like, to the more marginal areas where there's a disagreement behind us. And I say this as someone from the Labour Party, where we, I think, did exactly the wrong thing with Mrs May. She wanted to do something for social care, and we called it the death tax. I think it was irresponsible of us, and I think that is a symptom of how we need to carve out some areas that we, in a sense, put that bit of public money to one side, and then let's have a row about the more discretionary payments. Dan,
your point is very interesting, but to me it strikes me as absolutely too idealistic, or almost to consider. I mean, you've given the example of what happened with Mrs May, but the National Health Service is the more obvious example. Surely there will never be a situation in which the Labour Party doesn't see the National Health Service as being an enormous political opportunity for it, because it remains the case that people basically trust Labour much more with the National Health Service than with the Conservatives. So the idea of having a consensus between those two historic parties on such an important matter as the NHS seems to me inconceivable.
It may be inconceivable, but it seems to me that if we don't even try to do this, if we don't even try and spell out that what people want means they have to pay for it, it has to come out of their pockets. If we don't jointly make that argument, then I think we are in the difficulties that you've suggested, that it will be very difficult for a party to go honestly to the electorate and say, look, if you want more spending on this, you're going to have to put up taxes. That's really difficult for any one party to do. Yeah, it's a big jump. But, if idealists and people really who support democracy can't give a lead on that, then I think we're in some trouble.
Michael Murphy, you've been sitting there quite patiently. What's your reaction to what you've heard so far?
Well, I think that we've got several problems that are sort of running in tandem. We have the Labour backbenchers who pretty much go into anaphylactic shock at the prospect of cutting any welfare whatsoever, even placing a cap on the welfare state growing further than it is, which is what the welfare dispute was about last month. And then you have a section of society which are economically inactive, roughly 9 million people. And so those people have an invested interest in the public services being ever more bloated and, are going to vote along those lines. And they're very easily mobilised to that end. But the problem is that those two sort of electoral and parliamentary forces are contributing to a non-productive part of the economy that is only going to deepen our financial woes in the long term. And so I think that what the government needs to do is, it's unsurprising that there's little appetite for cuts in public spending when the tax burden is at a record high. People are saying, well, what am I getting for my money? I think what Reform or the Conservatives should do is link those specific cuts to public services, possibly not frontline services, but there are other ways to save money, and link those to tax reductions. And so people actually feel in their pockets that they're getting something for less of a service.
You mentioned there, Michael, Labour backbenchers. But you see, what worries me is that everybody is on this bandwagon. I mean, Reform UK wants to get rid of the two-child limit on child benefit. The Conservatives, Diane was alluding to this, the Conservatives, when they were last in power, were looking for a way to help middle-class people who were having to spend the inheritances that they were looking forward to from their parents on the long-term care of their parents at the end of their lives. So actually, all parties are seeking ways of extending the welfare state. That's what's got me so depressed.
Yes. Well, I think William correctly alluded to this gerontocratic dynamic that we have where, if you look at polling, it's the older generations which are more against cutting public services than the younger generations, largely because they rely on it more. And so I think that we need to frame this politically as a kind of intergenerational Ponzi scheme, really, where the young are being left out of pocket to foot the bill for the elderly, or for certain unproductive, less productive parts of society. And until that argument is made forcefully and persuasively, and that's, that we have this idea that actually this is to some degree zero sum. We are robbing Peter to pay Paul. Then until that argument is made and somebody has the political will and courage to advance it, then I don't see a way out of the impasse.
Diane, very briefly, if you would, we're coming to the end of this section. In contrast to your voice, during the recent debate, the backbench revolt, I thought I heard some people on the Labour benches more or less saying they thought their objective in life was to constantly expand the welfare state.
I hope not, but I didn't like the word bloated about welfare state. It seems to me that undermining of the support we give to those in need is a bad word. But no, I don't think that is the aim. I think the aim of people, of the state, should be to support people to look after themselves. And that is the most important thing we do. We do the things they can't do, like defence and police and all of that. And then we support them by education and other things to do what they can do best for themselves and their families.
Spoken like Beveridge. Thank you very much to my panel, Diane Hayter, William Atkinson, Michael Murphy. The panel will return at midday to discuss the ethics of Israel's decision to take political control of Gaza City. Just before we move on, I want to send a message to a particular viewer of the programme. Elizabeth Vaughan is a fan of GB News and has been watching us every day. She is a well-known soprano. You can see her here performing Madame Butterfly with Julie Andrews and James Garner back in 1982 in Victor, Victoria. Elizabeth, my very best wishes. Coming up, a discussion of the Ukraine and Russia war and whether a peace can be agreed in the Middle East. Both of those with the former MI6 chief, Sir Richard Dearlove. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
This is our country, and we think it's amazing. From high tea to the high street, we love it all. Even the rain, we like that too. There's nowhere else we'd rather be. That's why we're here to be the fearless champion of Britain, its voices and its values. Because we are GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record, you say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Mike Portillo. National security advisors from Europe, Ukraine and the United States met yesterday to discuss how an end can be brought to the war that was begun by Russia. Overnight, there have been reports that the White House is considering inviting President Vladimir Zelensky to President Trump and Vladimir Putin's meeting in Alaska next week. Ukraine's leader warns that a deal between them, but not agreed by his country, will not bring peace. His comments came hours after US President Donald Trump said a peace deal would involve some swapping of territories. Well, with me now is the former MI6 chief, Sir Richard Dearlove. Richard, very good to see you on a Sunday morning. Thank you very much for joining us. Nicholas Williams was on the previous programme, formerly of NATO, giving the view that Russia is winning the war. Recently, there was a very remarkable Ukrainian operation that apparently took out a battalion's worth of Russian troops. How do you read the position on the ground at the moment?
Running pension schemes is murder.
I don't think that the Russians are winning in quite the way that they think, although I'm told that the Russian general staff are giving Putin the idea that the Ukrainian line could break at some time in the next 2 to 3 months. Personally, I think that's unlikely. Their advance is at a tactical level small. I mean, the Russian advance is small. They're still losing huge numbers of men on a monthly, weekly basis. So I think that effectively we're looking at a continuation of the military conflict and no great strategic change at the moment. But you never know. There are surprises always hidden away, and the Ukrainians are very good at, as it were, pulling off these extraordinary operations, and we've seen a number of them in the past months.
Yeah, I asked you that question because I wanted to get into the mental framework of Zelensky. I mean, if he doesn't think he's losing, maybe he won't want to give ground, either literally or metaphorically. Indeed, if he does give ground, he is toast politically, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. He can't give ground. And in fact, constitutionally, his position doesn't allow him to make territorial concessions to the Russians. So I don't see there's any fundamental change in the build-up to these talks. I mean, what we know is that Trump likes the optics, but is less interested in the content. And obviously, the optics for a meeting in Alaska is a big deal, particularly for Putin. Remember, he is the subject of an international arrest warrant, and he's only travelled to countries that wouldn't enforce it, China and North Korea recently. So to go to Alaska with the endorsement of Trump is a big deal for him in terms of his own position in Russia and his, the publicity. But look, we haven't seen any reverse gear on Putin's original objectives for invading Ukraine. So I just don't quite see where this is going at the moment, other than the optics of a meeting with a minimal result?
Well, as I'm an avowed supporter of Ukraine, and it seems to me that the danger here is that Trump has already said, before the meeting has occurred, that it's going to require the Ukrainians to give up territory. Putin will insist that the Ukrainians give up territory, and then it could be claimed that the Ukrainians are blocking a ceasefire by being so block-headed as not to give up their territory to the aggressor.
I agree with you, and it's very worrying to see. I thought that, Trump's attitude to Ukraine had evolved over the past month since the NATO meeting to be more supportive of Ukraine and Zelensky. And, well, I guess we just don't know what's going to come out of this meeting. I mean, we know Rubio attended the meeting you've just referred to in your introduction yesterday. And, my understanding from the sort of vibrations I get from talking to people who work with Rubio is that they're not going to sell Ukraine down the river. Although every time, Trump starts an initiative, one's worried that he's going to overrule his own national security advisor. But, there's tremendous uncertainty. I just don't quite see where this is going.
Speculation that Zelensky might be invited. Slightly doubtful about that myself. But if you were advising Zelensky and he gets the invitation, does he have to go?
Good question. I think he probably should go, even if he's sitting in another room. And I mean, if Trump's the famous deal maker, you're going to have to shuttle between them. But look, what these negotiations lack, and you and I know from past experience that these complex issues are pre-settled by Sherpa negotiations. And, there's a massive amount of preparation if you're going to get anywhere near to a settlement. I think it's Trump, as it were, playing perhaps his last card in offering supposedly Russia a deal. Look, the only thing that Putin is going to move over is coercion. He will have to be coerced to, as it were, modify his ambition in relation to Ukraine. I don't see any other alternative. And I certainly know that there are people in his administration who are advising him that is the case. But of course, he doesn't necessarily listen. We know that from John Bolton's experience as National Security Advisor. And, Trump has a tendency to do his own thing. But, let's see where we get to. It's a very sensitive and difficult moment. And I just hope that we're not on the brink of Trump, selling Zelensky and Ukraine short. It would be a catastrophe for European security if he were to do that.
Amen. Do you mind if I just switch quickly to Gaza? I wonder what your reaction is to the Israeli intention to establish political control on Gaza City. Maybe just worth reminding viewers that Israel used to administer the Gaza Strip after one of the conflicts, Arab-Israeli conflicts, and voluntarily gave up the Gaza Strip and demolished settlements there. So we have been in a situation before of Israel administering politically all of the Gaza Strip. Now the proposal is part of it. What's your reaction to it?
Well, Netanyahu has a problem, and he's got to get rid of Hamas. So the question now is, how does he reach that sort of final point in his strategy, before we even start talking about the aftermath? Militarily, it looks like a faulty strategy, and I was very struck by the number of former Mossad colleagues and generals who formed up in that video to disagree with the policy, and I'm inclined to agree with them. But on the other hand, we spend an awful lot of time talking about the iniquities of the IDF, and no one talks about the iniquities of Hamas any longer. So I'm sort of confused and worried by where we are at the moment. Maybe by turning up the heat on Hamas, Netanyahu is creating a negotiating window, because it's possible that if the Gulf states can persuade Hamas to basically depart, there may be a diplomatic solution. And at the moment, the Israelis are not going to implement this policy for at least 2 months because they say that they've got to get the logistics ready, they've got to call up soldiers and everything else. And of course, there's this question of moving the population of Gaza. I mean, I think that maybe that this is a preliminary to Egypt and Qatar in particular pressing Hamas very hard for some sort of settlement. Look, if Hamas gave up the hostages tomorrow, we would have a settlement. And I think people seem to forget that fundamental point. And, you know, Netanyahu hasn't actually done yet, and he's still quite some distance from this threat.
Richard? Richard, thank you for reminding us of that fundamental point and all the rest for your wisdom too. Have a very good Sunday. Coming up, the number of self-published novels has shot up in recent years. Author Simon McLeave will talk to me about his experiences. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, and it's only on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Plenty of sunshine across much of England and Wales today. Cloudier skies, Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland as rain moves in later. But the largely dry weather is thanks to high pressure, which is across much of the UK, though this weather front slowly edging in from the west to give some cloud and rain. And you can see across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, a bit of a cloudier afternoon. There'll be some bright or sunny spells, a few showers possible. But across England and Wales, plenty of sunshine to come. A little cooler around the coast, but inland temperatures really starting to rise. Temperatures 25 to 28 Celsius towards the southeast. High teens to low 20s further northwest where it is a little cloudier. Into this evening time, we do see that cloud continuing to thicken across the northwest. Outbreaks of rain moving in here across the highlands, turning breezy around the coast as well. Still some sunshine into the evening across eastern parts of Scotland, but that rain also extending into parts of Northern Ireland, northwest England clouding over too, but a lovely end to the day across much of England and Wales. Plenty of sunny spells and temperatures on the warm side. As we go through the rest of the evening and overnight, further outbreaks of rain pushing eastwards across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland, Northern England, turning heavy at times over the higher ground, but it is patchy in nature, so some places staying dry into the early hours. The rest of England and Wales, some mist and fog patches forming once again. Temperatures not as low compared to the night just gone, double figures for everyone. So a bright start for much of England and Wales, plenty of sunny spells once the morning fog clears. Cloud and rain across parts of Northern England and Northern Ireland should clear, and it should lift and break to allow some sunny spells here, but the rain continues across northwestern parts of Scotland, particularly the Highlands where it could be heavy at times. But in that sunshine, temperatures rising to around 31 Celsius in the southeast.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News, the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Hello, welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. In 2007, Amazon introduced the opportunity for authors to self-publish, and large numbers have done so. The process is not straightforward and success is tough to come by, yet some authors have become fully-fledged novelists and quit their day jobs. Simon McLeave's debut novel, The Snowdonia Killings, has sold 500,000 copies since he published it online in 2020. And he joins me now. Simon, hello.
Hi, morning.
Well, congratulations to you on your success. Tell me about the process and tell me about how straightforward or otherwise it was.
Yeah, it's quite a complex process, I suppose. You have to sort of learn the ropes of how to advertise, marketing, publicity. So you do all the stuff that a publisher would do for you, along with writing the book. And so I spent probably the best part of a year genning up on the world of self-publishing, making sure that I knew all the ropes. And then, but I mean, hand on heart, I really thought when I first published it that I'd probably sell about 30 copies and continue my day job. So it was a shock when it started to sell as well as it did.
The day job was being a school teacher, but you had a background as a script writer, a screenwriter, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. So yeah, I'd spent a long time working in TV as a script editor and then writing on a series for the BBC and Holby and EastEnders and The Bell. And then thought I'd change tact, go and be a secondary school teacher for a while, and just, I suppose, write a book and see what happened. And that was 5 years ago, and sort of haven't looked back since.
Well, just before we get to that, had you tried to go the normal route through an agent to a publisher?
Yeah, absolutely. So my first port of call, having worked a little bit in the business, was to bang on the doors of publishers and agents. And I just got a lot of polite no's. And I guess then I came across an article about self-publishing and thought, well, this is probably my last chance. So why not publish it and see let the readers decide whether they want to read my books. And yeah, luckily for me, they did.
Tell me a little bit about the agent system. I mean, for regular publishing or physical books, you pretty much have to go through an agent, don't you? And they have somewhat limited capacity. Is that not so?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So, you need a literary agent to represent you before you can even really knock on the door of a publisher with their help to try and get your book launched. So it's very, very difficult. And you need to kind of catch the right agent on the right day for them to read your book and decide that they want to take you on as a client. So it is pretty restrictive. So the beauty of self-publishing is that you can do it off your own bat, and then, I guess, allow readers to decide whether they want to read your books going forward.
How did you decide what the price of your book should be?
Well, there's just various strategies. So you you start off low and then build an audience and then build up as you go through. So
can you reveal those numbers to me? I mean, they're all on the record, aren't they? What was your opening price?
So opening price for a Kindle version, the ebook of Snowdonia Killings, was 99 pence. I mean, these days my books are a little bit more expensive, but not too much. But I guess for me that was like, well, hopefully people will take a punt on 99 pence to read a book, or at least read the first few pages. And so, yeah, that's one of those marketing strategies that worked for me, luckily.
How did you advertise it?
So both on Amazon and Facebook. There's some sort of difficult strategies of, you basically try and target other authors that you think readers of, whether it's Linda LaPlante or Ian Rankin, that if they see your book, they might give it a go for 99 pence. And so you can kind of laser in on those readers using advertising.
And although it's not a physical book, it has a cover.
Yeah, they all have covers. On if you go to Amazon, then we all have covers, and
that's important.
And, yeah, absolutely. God, it's vital. I think that when you go on if you go online, then your book needs to look no different to the books of any sort of well-known crime author, whether it's Anne Cleeves or whoever it might be. That you have to kind of keep up with the professionals, I suppose, or your sort of contemporary writers.
Some of your early readers were locals to the murders. Is that right? So the good folk of Snowdonia wanted to read about killing in their area. Is that true?
They did indeed. So I don't think I'm very popular with the North Wales Tourist Board, but yeah, no, absolutely. When I go to events now, it's that a lot of people from the area have kind of got very excited about seeing their area portrayed in these books, and they're very supportive. So luckily for me.
Have you become rich, Simon?
Comfortable. Definitely earn a lot more than when I was a teacher. So.
Yeah, and there are examples of people who've made millions, aren't there?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. Not me, but I'm still I'm very lucky. I'm comfortable, and I get to write books every day, which is, my dream it's my hobby that I earn a living at. So I'm very lucky.
I mean, most of the time now we're so sort of negative about AI and the progress of technology. You're actually someone who has benefited from being able to publish online.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, no, without being able to do that, I would still be teaching and I wouldn't be writing books. So because of the success digitally, I've now got contracts with HarperCollins and Storm and other publishers, and I've got an agent. So I kind of went a different route and then attracted people because I'd sold so many books online that obviously those people now wanted to be a part of my career.
Well,
so,
congratulations, Simon. And good luck with future murders. That's Simon McLeave.
Thanks very much.
Now it's time for the Great British Giveaway and your chance to live mortgage or rent-free for a year, plus have an extra £5,000 in your bank to play with. And if you don't pay a monthly mortgage or rent payment, we'll give you £15,000 cash instead. Here's all the details that you need to apply.
We want to send some of those monthly financial stresses packing this August with your chance to be mortgage or rent-free for 12 whole months. We'll give you a cash lump sum that equals 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, right up to an amazing £20,000. We'll also throw in an extra £5,000 on top of that for good measure, because why not? And if you don't have a mortgage or rent to pay, lucky you. We'll give you £15,000 tax-free cash instead. What are you waiting for? Lines will close on the 29th of August. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message. Or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Coming up shortly, the Justice Secretary says she can use new legislation to allow the immediate deportation of some suspected convicted foreign criminals. As more than 26,000 migrants have arrived on small boats in the UK this year, the former Attorney General, Sir Michael Ellis, will give me his reaction. That's still to come. And if you're in search of some holiday sun, here's the forecast for top European destinations.
You're looking happy.
Well, the forecast looks good.
So you've sorted the travel insurance then?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. The European heatwave will continue over the next few days, so some very high temperatures for many places. Lots of blue skies and sunshine, though, including the Canary Islands and Madeira, but the heat is most intense across Iberia, so Portugal and inland parts of Spain seeing temperatures into the low to mid-40s Celsius. Hot also across Italy, the Balkans, Greece and Turkey. And it's going to stay hot over the next few days as well. Lots and lots of sunshine, temperatures in the high 30s or low 40s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
Britain was once the envy of the world. But look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m. only on GB News.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record, just like week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m. only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. The Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, has announced a plan that she describes as radical action to remove foreign criminals from our prisons and to deport them. Legislation introduced by the government in June allows most foreign prisoners to be deported after serving 30% of their prison time rather than 50%. But, as I understand it, she's also announced new legislation that she intends to introduce, which would enable prisoners to be deported the moment that they had been sentenced. Joining me now is the former Attorney General, Sir Michael Ellis, obviously a Conservative. Michael, what do you make of these?
Good morning, Michael.
Good morning.
Well, I'm afraid I think this is a stunt. It's a pure political stunt, but perhaps more importantly, I don't think it's going to work. And there are three key problems with this announcement. I mean, the first is that you've got to have a country that's willing to accept these foreign offenders. We know already that Pakistan has tried to impose a quid pro quo on the United Kingdom, if reports are correct, that flights from Pakistan International Airways would need to restart, and they'd been paused for safety reasons, if they were going to accept some convicted offenders. So you've got to have a country that's willing to take their own offenders back, and Jamaica is another country that's historically been reluctant to do that. There's a lot of countries that haven't done it. So nothing in this announcement indicates that that's going to change the picture. I think unless the British government is prepared to put some pressure on foreign countries to accept their own offenders back, it simply isn't going to get out of the starting box. That's the first point. And the way of putting pressure on might be to, as Robert Jenrick has spoken about, might be to actually say to these countries, your visas will be stopped, and you won't have tourists and business people able to come to this country, or we'll stop international aid. The sort of thing that we've seen the Americans threaten to do. But that's
I'm anxious to get on to the next 2 points as well.
The other issue, of course, is that human rights lawyers, as you know, Michael, may actually say, well, it's unfair to send them back. More accurately, it's a breach of their rights under the Human Rights Act or under Article 8, the right to a family life. And I don't see anything in this announcement that's going to stop that. And the third problem will be the issue of fairness, because let's give an example of, say, two offenders who have robbed a bank together with a firearm, for example. One is British, the other is a foreign offender. They're both convicted in a joint enterprise of robbing a bank. As I understand it, this announcement would mean that they would both be sentenced to, say, 10 years imprisonment. The British offender would serve the 10 years, or at least 5 out of those 10 years, the foreign offender could on day one be deported back to his country of origin. So the victims
where that offender might not serve any term.
He might not serve any term at all, and there'd be no guarantee that that would happen. And so there's a myriad of problems with this proposal.
And then the British government breezily says that people who've been expelled in this way would not be granted re-entry to the country. But that supposes that we are able to control our borders, and there's not a great deal of evidence of that.
No, and this isn't, frankly, a solely Labour government issue. We have seen for some years now that we don't have proper control over our borders, and that means that you can impose all the regulations that you want, but if someone is prepared to ignore those regulations and come in illegally, thousands and tens of thousands have been able to do so. And there's no reason to believe that if a person's been convicted of a criminal offence and they want to come back into this country, that they will they'll be reluctant to do so.
I mean, just on tiny technical point, are migrants, for example, who arrive in boats fingerprinted? Would we pick up that this was someone who'd been convicted of a crime in this country?
Not necessarily. And in fact, that's assuming that they come through in a regular means. If they come, to use the current vernacular, in an irregular means, you know, in an unlawful way, of course there's no fingerprinting. There's no way, unless they're unless they're stopped by the authorities, there's no way that we'll know who they are. I mean, that actually is presumably going to be a very low number, to be fair, because if a person's been sentenced to a term of imprisonment and then they've been deported and not had to serve any of that sentence, it seems, to be fair, unlikely that they'll want to come back into this country. They might try and leave their home country and go somewhere else. Yeah. But what I think really is not going to work is the proposal generally, without being sure that lawyers aren't going to be able to stop it and the countries that you're sending them back to are going to receive it. And there's no evidence that any of that's changed.
The government says both that it is improving the data collection and that since the general election, it has sent back more than 5,000 convicted prisoners.
Yeah. Well, frankly, the data is all over the place on this, but what we do know is that some 12% of prisoners in this country are foreign offenders, 12%, nearly 11,000 people. And it costs £54,000 a year to house a prisoner in one of His Majesty's establishments. And so it's a very expensive thing. But what, of course, Shabana Mahmood, the Justice Secretary, is doing is trying to open up prison spaces. But I'm afraid this is a stunt that isn't going to work, Michael.
Almost a one-word answer. Do you not feel ashamed sitting there because this situation was going on under you? At least the government's trying to do something about it.
Well, to be fair, the previous government also tried to do something about it, but the reality is, for 30 years, this has been going in the wrong direction.
Thank you very much, Sir Michael Ellis. Great pleasure to see you. That concludes the first hour of Sunday with Michael Portillo. The panel will be back to discuss the ethics of Israel's political control of part or all of Gaza. Stefan Kyriazis will tell me what's going on in the world of theatre. Next month marks the 200 years since the start in England of the modern railway. And John Buxton will talk to me about electrification. The historian Alexander Mariotti will be live with me from Rome as plans for a bridge between Italy and Sicily, which was envisaged nearly 2,000 years ago, have finally been approved. But unfortunately, the question now is, may the money end up with the mafia? This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, and it's only on GB News.
Today, clouds overhead. Total zen within. Boxed Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Plenty of sunshine across much of England and Wales today. Cloudier skies, Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland as rain moves in later. But the largely dry weather is thanks to high pressure, which is across much of the UK, though this weather front slowly edging in from the west to give some cloud and rain. And you can see across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, a bit of a cloudier afternoon. There'll be some bright or sunny spells, a few showers possible. But across England and Wales, plenty of sunshine to come. A little cooler around the coast, but inland temperatures really starting to rise. Temperatures 25 to 28 Celsius towards the southeast. High teens to low 20s further northwest where it is a little cloudier. Into this evening time, we do see that cloud continuing to thicken across the northwest. Outbreaks of rain moving in here across the highlands, turning breezy around the coast as well. Still some sunshine into the evening across eastern parts of Scotland, but that rain also extending into parts of Northern Ireland, northwest England, clouding over too. But a lovely end to the day across much of England and Wales. Plenty of sunny spells and temperatures on the warm side. As we go through the rest of the evening and overnight, further outbreaks of rain pushing eastwards across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland, Northern England, turning heavy at times over the higher ground, but it is patchy in nature, so some places staying dry into the early hours. The rest of England and Wales, some mist and fog patches forming once again. Temperatures not as low compared to the night just gone, double figures for everyone. So a bright start for much of England and Wales, plenty of sunny spells once the morning fog clears. Cloud and rain across parts of Northern England and Northern Ireland should clear, and it should lift and break to allow some sunny spells here, but the rain continues across northwestern parts of Scotland, particularly the Highlands where it could be heavy at times. But in that sunshine, temperatures rising to around 31 Celsius in the southeast.
Today, clouds overhead, total zen within. Box Solar sponsors the weather on GB News.
There's just 3 weeks to see how you could win your mortgage or rent paid for a whole year. That's a cash lump sum equivalent to 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, right up to a whopping £20,000. Plus, we'll add an extra £5,000 on top for good measure. Make sure you don't miss out as lines close on the 29th of August. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
5 hosts, 5 opinions, 5 fearless debates, 5 unfiltered takes on the day's news.
5 reasons not to be anywhere else on Saturday night.
This is the Saturday 5. You got me. You got me good there. Britain's biggest Saturday night TV show.
It's not a bad brand.
Yeah. Uncensored.
Very, very racy tonight.
On the unpredictable.
What did she say? Can you translate it for us?
And always entertaining.
And how can a country go from being led by William Wallace Saturday nights from 6 p.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
You're going to want to stay tuned, trust me.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
He can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/your say. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/your say, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
May I be the first to wish you a good afternoon. Fortune favours the bold, said Pliny the Elder, as he decided to approach the erupting Mount Vesuvius. We shall not avoid choppy waters during another hour of politics, art and culture. Israel will take over Gaza City. What are the ethics of its return to political administration in the Gaza Strip? My panel will discuss. Stefan Kyriazis will be here to give me his theatre reviews. including Everything is Brilliant and Goodnight Oscar. He's also been to see the Peaky Blinders stage show. Why is less than 40% of Britain's rail network electrified? Why have we slipped behind others? The author of a new book on the sad story will join me. A bridge between Italy and Sicily has been planned for nearly 2,000 years and has now been approved. Will it be built? And will the mafia be involved if it is? Before all of that, your latest news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Thanks, Michael. Very good afternoon to you. Our headlines. The government has vowed to send most foreign criminals packing with new legislation that will mean they're deported immediately when they receive a custodial sentence. Murderers, terrorists and those on life sentences would still have to serve their full sentence in the UK before deportation. Ministers say the planned changes for England and Wales will save the taxpayer an average £54,000 a year for each prison place. Well, the Conservatives say Justice Secretary Shabana Mahmood should go further by suspending visas and aid to any country that does not accept returns. But Labour Minister Alex Davis-Jones says the government's clamping down on loopholes in the law.
Been very clear as a government, the Home Secretary and the Lord Chancellor, that we feel like Article 8, which is the right to a family life, is being abused currently. We need to tighten that up, and we are looking at just exactly how we do that. We are, of course, ready for any legal challenges, but we believe that this policy is robust. We are doing the right thing here by the British taxpayer, by the British citizens, and we are ensuring that we are committed to their plan for change and doing what they think is right.
Reports in the US claim President Zelensky could be invited to talks about the war in Ukraine with Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin next Friday. It's understood the White House is only planning for discussions with the Russian leader, but the US president remains open to a three-way meeting. Ukraine's allies held a security summit hosted by the Foreign Secretary David Lammy yesterday. They're calling for Zelensky's involvement in peace talks, saying the path to peace cannot be decided without Kyiv. Well, Volodymyr Zelensky's rejected Donald Trump's suggestion that any deal will involve the swapping of territories. But Tory MP Sir Geoffrey Clifton-Brown says Ukraine may have to accept that as part of any negotiations.
I think some territory swap is inevitable, given that Russia now holds quite a bit of Ukraine. Inevitably, at least on some form of informal basis, Russia is likely to want to occupy that bit that it holds. The idea of NATO membership, I would have thought, would be a complete anathema to President Putin, so I doubt that'll be part of the deal. In fact, I would think totally the opposite. Whatever the peace deal is, there will be peacekeepers in what remains of Ukraine, and I suspect the deal will be that they will not be allowed to join NATO.
Police say 474 people were arrested in central London yesterday during demonstrations in support of Palestine Action. Of those, 466 were for supporting the group, which is punishable by up to 14 years in prison. Dozens of people simultaneously unveiled handwritten signs opposing genocide and supporting Palestine Action, which was banned last month under anti-terror laws. Amnesty International, the charity, has described the mass arrests as deeply concerning. The UN Security Council will hold an emergency session later to discuss Israel's plan to occupy Gaza City. Antonio Guterres, the Secretary-General, says the proposal to expand military operations into the territory is a dangerous escalation. The meeting, which was requested by 5 European nations, including the UK and France, has been endorsed by all Security Council members except the United States and the current chair, Panama. It was originally scheduled to take place last night. The Home Office says 435 migrants crossed the English Channel yesterday. A total of 7 boats were brought to the Dover shore by Border Force and the RNLI. It takes the total number of arrivals this year to more than 26,000. Firefighters in Dorset say they have brought a wildfire at Holt Heath near Winbourne under control. The crew of more than 100 firefighters saved one property from the blaze, which started yesterday morning. A major incident was declared and 20 homes evacuated. Finally, the last newspaper street vendor in Paris is to receive one of France's highest honours after doing his job around the streets of the capital for 50 years.
Breaking news. Monica Lewinsky is pregnant by Trump. She's got twins. Oh, yeah.
Ali Akbar has been selling dailies on the terraces of cafes in Saint-Germain since 1973. Now he's to be officially recognised for his contribution to French culture. Emmanuel Macron, the president, who bought papers from Mr Akbar as a student, will decorate him with the Order of Merit next month. The veteran says he'll continue as long as his health allows. Those are your headlines. I'll be back with more at about 25 minutes.
For all the latest from GB News whilst you're on the go, get the GB News app. Scan the QR code now to download or visit gbnews.com/app.
Thank you, Aaron Armstrong. Gaza has been controlled by many occupiers. In the fairly recent past, it's been governed by Egypt, then Israel. Then, after Israel withdrew and demolished its settlements, by the Palestinian Authority, which was pushed aside by Hamas. Hamas's deadly attack on Israel on the 7th of October 2023 led Benjamin Netanyahu to pledge to destroy Hamas. Hamas is pledged to destroy Israel. Now Netanyahu's government will take over Gaza City in a couple of months, in a move widely condemned around the world. What are the ethics of Israel occupying part or all of Gaza? Joining me now is my panel. Welcome back, Assistant Content Editor at The Spectator, William Atkinson, Telegraph journalist Michael Murphy, and the former chair of the Labour Party, Baroness Hayter. Diane Hayter, what's your reaction to this? What are the ethics of this?
It's interesting, isn't it, how similar to what we're seeing over in Ukraine, that we have these men, rather autocratic men, uncontrolled at the moment by a parliament, invading other countries. And actually, I think there are some similarities. I don't think it's ethical, but more than that, I think it undermines Israel's own position. If the Americans, if the Europeans and others that ought to be supporting and helping Israel have secure borders have so distanced themselves because of this action, it seems to me not only is it ethically questionable, but actually in diplomatic terms, this is not a sensible move forward and doesn't bring us any closer to a peace agreement, hard though that always will be.
I just wonder if it's more morally complicated than that. And I'm surprised at how little this is mentioned. I mean, many people wanted Israel to withdraw from the lands that it occupied after the various wars. By the way, they were wars of aggression against Israel. In one instance, it did that. It used to control Gaza. It withdrew from Gaza. It demolished settlements. I mean, that was quite a bold political act by the Israeli Prime Minister at the time. The Palestinian Authority went in, but it was pushed aside by Hamas. I said this in the introduction. Where is the encouragement for Israel to withdraw from territories when what has happened is that the government that was in place has been replaced by a terrorist organisation which very clearly has used it as a base for terrorism against Israel?
Well, I think that it is about the international community and indeed the Arab community that is clearly really important in this, wanting to see the people of Palestine being able to control their own future. And Hamas is not good for that. Hamas is actually working against the interest of the people of Gaza. So actually we need that international support, particularly from the Arab neighbours, to help the Gaza population. And that ought to be the focus. And everything that we do should be trying to support the international force, really, to get Hamas out of there and begin to allow the Palestinians who live there to be able to control their own future.
Michael Murphy, how do you see the ethics of this question?
I think that's entirely dependent on the ultimate objectives of this operation. If you look at what's happened only this week, a prominent member of the Israeli cabinet, Itamar Ben-Gvir, went up to the Temple Mount, one of the holiest sites in both Judaism and Islam, and led prayers calling for, announcing the conquest of Gaza and the a voluntary resettlement of its population. Now, that seems to be something that the government is sympathetic to. The voluntary resettlement scheme has been made one of their war aims, and so if that is the ultimate consequence of this, then I think it's ethically it's very difficult to defend for Israel and Israel's many defenders around the world. And it's going to have broader ramifications in terms of how it pans out, because if they have to occupy a densely populated city, as Gaza City is, and they're trying to resettle that population, who I imagine will resist fiercely, then that's going to lead to a great amount of bloodshed and blur the distinction between Hamas operatives and civilians even further. And so Israel's going to be drawn into a kind of quagmire that it's difficult to see how it could extricate itself without protracted urban conflict with a civilian population.
Last week at this time, 27 former senior members of the Foreign Office wrote a letter in which they called for the recognition of Gaza. And I was interviewing one of them on the programme last week. Unfortunately, we were cut off by a technical issue. But I thought he said rather breezily, we recognise Palestine, but Hamas must not be involved, will not be involved in its administration. This struck me as wholly unrealistic. I mean, on other occasions, such Foreign Office people would say Hamas cannot be destroyed, and that would seem to me to be closer to the truth, actually, that Hamas cannot be destroyed. So if that is the case, what exactly do we expect Israel to do about this place which is controlled by a terrorist organisation from which terrorist operations are mounted?
Well, Michael, the main debate in Israel at the moment seems to be a rift between the chief of staff of the IDF, and the cabinet, where he suggested a kind of cordon sanitaire around the parts of Gaza where there is still a large population, and sort of targeted surgical strikes and raids to root out the remaining members of Hamas. Now, that seems to be, like you allude to, a band-aid on the problem. It's not going to completely extirpate them from the strip. We're at this worrying impasse now where it seems like the only way that they can completely root and branch remove Hamas is by something akin to ethnic cleansing or the mass relocation of the civilian population of Gaza temporarily. But then the problem is you have to then trust that the Israeli government will be sufficiently incentivized to bring them back, which many people, given the utterances of senior people in the Israeli government, are not inclined to believe.
William Atkinson, you've been very patient. What's your view?
I agree with Michael. You know, the Israeli government is acting in the spirit of Tacitus. It is making a desert in Gaza and calling it peace. I think what we currently are seeing is not only the outcrop of Israel's inherent security situation, the fact that it's surrounded by people who want its destruction, but of the failure to sort of reconcile the spirit of the Balfour Declaration over the last century. We've proven time and time again that two peoples cannot share one land, and Palestinian and Israeli nationalism cannot be reconciled. And I think what we are ultimately seeing is, yes, as Michael suggests, ethnic cleansing, because I think the logical outcrop of Israel's current position is that a Palestinian state of any kind cannot be allowed to continue to exist, because the young men who survive the sort of ongoing current war are only going to be sufficiently radicalised that they are going to launch another Hamas-style attack in 10, 20 years' time. So, yes, so I think...
What should Israel's policy be?
I mean, again, I think this is a case of the liberal international order sort of breaking down around us. The strong are doing what they will and the weak are suffering what they must. I think this is the logical conclusion of Israel's position. Do I think that the British right should be tearing it on? As a member of that, no, I don't think so. I think we should distance ourselves from this because, as you were suggesting, the utterances of British officials or protesters or all the rest have no actual impact on the realities of the ground. And I think the only conclusion for Israel's sort of continued existence is going to be, yes, the mass removal of the Palestinian population. And that is something that, by our own sort of ethical standards, we must consider grotesque. But I can't see any other way in which Israel is ever going to have the sort of peace and security it craves.
Panel, let's very quickly talk about Palestine action without treading on anything that's sub judice. Diane, what's been your reaction to the proscription of this organisation?
I'm not against the prescription. I'm against the now protests about it. I mean, I think what happened yesterday was dreadful for the Palestinians, because the whole concentration then is whether or not Palestine action should have been prescribed, and people taking, trying to protest against that. So the whole debate becomes then about our freedom of speech instead of the Palestinian people. So that, for those who really want the future of Palestine to be different from what they see it as, to concentrate on a British law.
Do you blame Palestine action for its own proscription?
Yes, but I'm even more blaming at the moment for what's going on, that we are taking the attention off what's happening in the Middle East to focus on our protesters here and whether they should have held up certain signs. They could have protested yesterday about what's happening in Palestine without using the word Palestinian action. And therefore, the concentration would have been on what they want rather than this rather inward-looking focus that I think distracts from the case they want to make.
William, do you think the government has behaved wisely in prescribing this organisation with the result that hundreds of people are getting arrested?
I think it was right to sort of prescribe the massive terrorist organisation as
Palestine Action.
Yeah, Palestine Action. I think they were right to prescribe them. And I think the problem is that what Palestine Action are clearly currently doing with their protest yesterday is testing the limits of the British state. Do they actually test that we have the capacity to arrest such a large number of people and put them in prison for up to 14 years, I think. And we will see as a consequence of yesterday's protest. But again, as I was saying, this has no actual impact on what is going on the ground in Gaza. It is not unlikely to change the current government's position, which is indeed much more sympathetic than that of many other many other governments. But again, as to say, this is all a sideshow, and Diane's right to say it's a distraction from the actual sort of raising of the issue of what is currently going on the ground in the Middle East.
Michael Murphy, one commentator on the right, Simon Heffer, possibly surprisingly said that he was against the prescription of Palestine Action. He thought it was down to the incompetence of the RAF not to have defended their own property. How do you feel about the prescription?
I found myself agreeing with much of what Simon Heffer said in that piece. I think that words need to have meaning, and especially words like terrorist, and we dilute those at our peril. And so, while the actions that they took were clearly worthy of lengthy prison sentences and sabotage against the British state, we invited the protesters to make martyrs of themselves under a law that's going to, I think, going to turn into a kind of form of mockery, because these people who are out protesting on the streets clearly aren't terrorists, but part of a sophisticated terrorist organisation. And now we're in this embarrassing situation where we need to weigh up: are we going to throw the book at them and lock them away as if they were, which then makes the British state look draconian and like this situation is getting out of all proportion, or are we going to just accept the sabotage of our national infrastructure? I think we should have just, passed a law against the targeting or literature targeting our infrastructure or any such activities like that, and that could have bypassed the whole question of a terrorist designation.
We should make it clear there we're talking about some allegations that have been made that will be tested in court. But panel, thank you very much indeed. Diane Hayter, William Atkinson, Michael Murphy. Hope to see you all again. Coming up, Stefan Kyriazis has been out and about and has seen Everything is Brilliant and Good Night Oscar. We'll hear his theatre review in a moment. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
You want to know what's really going on in the corridors of power? Labour don't know what to do with you half the time, and that makes you quite lethal in the chamber. Get behind the headlines with Chopper's Political Podcast. Join me, Christopher Hope, as I sit down with the great and the good of British politics. We'll see where this ruling takes us. These are the stories shaping our nation. Chopper's Political Podcast, available now on all platforms. Listen in and stay ahead.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
27 now. Heaven, Health and Beauty in Shropshire is celebrating the official unveiling of their royal warrant today.
Well, it's been recognised as the supplier of skincare products and treatments to Her Majesty the Queen after she first used the company's products 19 years ago. She's a loyal customer.
She is a loyal customer. Jack Carson has been getting the treatment.
I was just like, I wish my mum was here to see this.
There's a beaming smile on the face of Heaven, Health and Beauty founder Deborah Mitchell as she celebrates the unveiling of their royal warrant. Starting her business with £10 in her pocket in 1995, Deborah says she's worked from the ground up and started providing skincare treatments to Her Majesty the Queen 19 years ago. Today she says she's honoured to be a recipient of a royal warrant.
It is a feeling that you cannot explain, but I was very lucky before having the royal warrant when Camilla Parker Bowles was Camilla Parker Bowles, and I didn't tell anybody I did her treatments. It hit in the press, and then this product, which is the bee venom made from bees, makes the skin look younger using a Botox alternative.
The King and Queen have granted royal warrants to almost 400 companies that supply the royal household, with each one lasting up to 5 years. It also means those companies can display the royal arms on their products. Director and daughter of Deborah, Ella Mitchell, makes this business a family affair, and she's made sure the packaging is already getting a fresh look. Ella says she's proud the products are made in Britain.
The achievement itself, you feel proud to be British, and I think that's one of the core values of us.
GB News, the People's Channel.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record. You say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Mike Portillo. Stefan Kyriazis has been repeatedly spotted in London's Soho, and he's here with his latest theatre reviews. Lovely to see you, Stefan. What have you been to see? Have you had fun?
Yeah, nothing quite as seedy as you seem to imply, spotted around the back streets of Soho. However, I have seen 3 marvellous plays, one starting off at Soho Place, the brand new theatre on the corner.
Marvellous plays?
Yeah. Oh, did I say marvellous?
I thought you did.
Taking that back. 3 plays.
Okay.
three major plays, let's put it that way. First one's at Soho Place. That's running until November the 8th. Now, I saw opening night with Lenny Henry, who is a marvellous person. However, we've got a little clip, and you will see that it is not Lenny Henry going to talk us through the show a little bit.
The reason I wanted to do the play was how brilliant the writing is. For something to be this sad and this hopeful and this funny, it's very, very, very difficult tightrope to find a piece of writing that manages to do all those things at once. Well, it's been interesting when people have said, oh, you're doing a play, what is it? Because the one-liner of the show, it's nobody wants to say the word suicide. Nobody wants to hear that. We all have such a difficult reaction to that. But this play is about life. It's about the living of life. There's something about this list. There's something about the way in which we all deal with life, which is to try and find, even in the most dire circumstances, to find the thing that is most beautiful.
It's called Every Brilliant Thing.
Yes.
And a boy makes the list about the things that are good in life. Is that true?
Yes. So he's 7 years old to start off with, in theory, and his father picks him up from school and says, your mum's done something stupid. And his mum will repeat this with big gaps in between, but his sort of child brain thinks, I'm going to make her a list of all the things to be happy. Now, as we come into the theatre, lots of people are handed cards, and when I got there, Lenny Henry was still handing them out, and I did the very British, please don't pick me thing. He did, however, pick one of the other very major critics, which was very amusing. And basically, it's a one-person show written by Duncan Macmillan, who said very much the theme is, I wanted to give people hope. So it's a very heavy subject, but it's dealt with pretty lightly. Lenny Henry is a performer and a comedian and a raconteur. You feel incredibly warm towards him. When he starts asking people to shout out the first one, which is ice cream, the guy fumbled it. So he literally went, no, rewind, restarted the show. And there's lots of that. He runs around and high fives people, gets people shouting things out. So it's a really joyful experience.
One of the critics didn't like that, though, because the point is the play, and the critic that I read was saying that he was diverting the play towards stand-up, which is something quite different.
I think that's the way that the play is constructed, so it's not just Lenny Henry doing it. It will be very interesting. We've got Sue Perkins coming up. She's a comedian. Mini Driver doesn't come in until October. So I think it's going to be different how everyone does it. Lenny Henry refers to his father as Jamaican. That's obviously not going to be the case with Mini Driver. So, yes, it's not Lenny Henry so much, although I'll be interested to see what other more actory people do with it. But, yeah, it's a very difficult shift between comedy and pathos and sadness. It handles it pretty well, but its intention is not to go too deep or too heavy. So I didn't...
Where are you coming down on this?
I'm coming down somewhere in the middle. As an enjoyable evening, very much so. I didn't so much get the suicide side of it, and I don't think that there's quite enough to that. However, what I took away from it was what was the brilliant thing, was how we went through, I don't know, 20, 30 different things, ripples of recognition the whole time when he shouted out roller coasters or whatever it might be. It just, in these very divided times, it just reminded me how actually similar we all are. So for me, that was the really uplifting part of it, that you just sat there and you thought, oh, God, yeah, I love that. I do love, and everyone else is nodding. Okay. So that's the joy of it. It's a joyful experience. It'll be fun to see different actors doing it. It's a different type of theatre. So just go at it from that.
You haven't sold it to me. What's your next one?
The next one is, this is Sean Hayes, who's big star from Will and Grace in America.
Yes.
And he's come in with Goodnight Oscar, which he won a Tony Award for a couple of years ago on Broadway.
Yes.
Brought over the Broadway production with a couple of people from it. So this is Oscar Levant, who was a bit player in Hollywood in all the films, like An American in Paris or Bandwagon, things like that. Kind of the amusing person on the piano. However, he wanted to be so much more. We've got a little clip again with Sean Hayes to show you what it's all about.
What do you do for exercise? I stumble, then I fall into a coma. What people do when they're surprised, shocked, and uncomfortable.
I have a feeling you're going to tell me.
They laugh.
This is what everyone likes to always call a tour de force. It is a performance. Levant had lots of mental health issues. He was often committed. He had drug problems, depression. He was a friend of George Gershwin, however, became overshadowed. He was also a highly talented musician and composer, but became completely smothered and overshadowed by Gershwin. And then on Gershwin's deathbed, promised to keep his music alive and actually became the highest paid concert pianist in America, the best-selling classical records, playing Gershwin's music. So he's tortured by this. He has hallucinations. We get Gershwin coming onto the stage and interacting. There's a phrase where he says something like, I am Eeyore in a bad suit. So for me, it's really impressive what he does. He slumps, he slurs, he twitches, he rocks in his chair, he rolls on the floor. There's a lot going on the whole time.
And by the way, he plays the piano.
Well, we'll get to that. But it's all shrugged on like a suit for me. I could feel the performance.
Shrugged on like a suit, I've got you.
I could feel the beats of it. It's incredibly impressive, but I never felt we got into the interior life of him. And the surrounding characters are just cardboard cutouts. We do get the full Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue. It's staggering. However, I did read an American critic that said you shouldn't really win a Tony Award just for playing the piano, which was possibly a little bit harsh, but the whole thing is very arch, and it's beautifully done. The sets are glorious, but for me, again, a little bit sterile. I just felt like I was watching a very sort of prestige piece, but I didn't really get to grips with what was really torturing this man. Very impressive to see. Again, I'm coming down even lower than I did for... Okay. It was a 3 for the previous one. This one edged onto a 2 for me, but a lot of critics don't agree with me.
And see if you get this one. And to cap it all, Peaky Blinders.
To cap it all, Peaky Blinders, hurrah! If you want violence, death, more drugs, extremely unpleasant men behaving very badly, this is what you go to the ballet for. So this is Rombo Dance, but it's in collaboration with Stephen Knight, who wrote Peaky Blinders and who is writing the new James Bond film that Denis Villeneuve will direct. It's been touring for ages. I've raved about it before. It's currently at Sadler's Wells, and it's only on until Saturday, and then we're done. Please go and see it. We've got a tiny quick clip.
Let's look at it.
Take a little walk to the edge of town and go across the track where the viaduct looms like a bird of doom as it shifts and cracks. His shadow is cast wherever he stands, stacks of green paper in his red right hand.
Watch Peaky Blinders, will you understand anything?
I didn't watch Peaky Blinders. I tried. I got about 10 minutes into the episode and literally they were attacking a man, reached into his mouth and pulled his teeth out in an alleyway. And I was like, nope, not for me. This, I mean, we do get someone actually sort of stabbed in the stomach and some sort of fake entrails come out.
This ballet tries to do the kind of the whole plot.
Yeah, no, yeah. It's the story of Thomas Shelby and it boils it down to essentials. First World War, a hero, but also because he's violent and brutal, then building his crime empire in Birmingham, falling in love, tragically and very doomed. I mean, it looks cinematic, which is what I love it. There are moments, and they do these wonderful things where every now and then they just kind of pose, and it's like a still from a film.
So this is absolutely your top one for the week.
I love this. It's
only on
beautiful.
Saturday.
It's finishing on Saturday. It has been going all around the country for a year,
so
but this is your last chance. I'm pretty sure they filmed it as well. I have high hopes. This is stunning, and Sad as Well is not crazy expensive. So please, if you can, please don't miss. There are still some tickets
The last
available.
chance, at least for the time being. Thank you very much indeed, Stefan Kyriazis. Well, you may have witnessed Britain's painfully slow progress in electrifying the rail network. John Buxton has co-authored a new book about the trials and tribulations for improving our rail infrastructure, and he joins me next. But first, news headlines with Aaron Armstrong.
Thanks, Michael. Good afternoon to you. Our headlines. Foreign criminals who are given a custodial sentence in England and Wales will be deported immediately under new plans put forward by the Justice Secretary. Foreign nationals account for around 12% of the prison population. The government says it will save £54,000 per person. President Trump is considering inviting Volodymyr Zelensky to his meeting with Vladimir Putin in Alaska on Friday. The UK and other European nations are urging the US to apply more pressure on Russia, saying Ukraine must be included in any path to peace. 447 people were arrested at a demonstration in support of the banned group Palestine Action in London yesterday. Police say it's the most arrests made related to a single operation in the past decade. 3,000 riot police were deployed across England and Wales yesterday amid ongoing protests outside hotels housing asylum seekers. A handful of arrests were made. And firefighters in Dorset say they have brought a wildfire at Holt Heath near Wimborne under control. The crew of more than 100 saved one property from the fire, which started yesterday morning. That's it. Full bulletin coming up for you at 1 o'clock.
Tune into GB News Radio wherever you are, online, on DAB digital radio, on TuneIn, on Radio Player, and on your smart speaker. Just say, play GB News.
Hello, good morning. Welcome to your latest GB News weather forecast. Plenty of sunshine across much of England and Wales today. Cloudier skies, Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland as rain moves in later. But the largely dry weather is thanks to high pressure, which is across much of the UK, though this weather front slowly edging in from the west to give some cloud and rain. And you can see across Northern Ireland, parts of Scotland, a bit of a cloudier afternoon. There'll be some bright or sunny spells, a few showers possible. But across England and Wales, plenty of sunshine to come. A little cooler around the coast, but inland temperatures really starting to rise. Temperatures 25 to 28 Celsius towards the southeast. High teens to low 20s further northwest where it is a little cloudier. Into this evening time, we do see that cloud continuing to thicken across the northwest. Outbreaks of rain moving in here across the highlands, turning breezy around the coast as well. Still some sunshine into the evening across eastern parts of Scotland, but that rain also extending into parts of Northern Ireland, northwest England, clouding over too. But a lovely end to the day across much of England and Wales. Plenty of sunny spells and temperatures on the warm side. As we go through the rest of the evening and overnight, further outbreaks of rain pushing eastwards across parts of Northern Ireland, Scotland, Northern England, turning heavy at times over the higher ground, but it is patchy in nature, so some places staying dry into the early hours. The rest of England and Wales, some mist and fog patches forming once again. Temperatures not as low compared to the night just gone, double figures for everyone. So a bright start for much of England and Wales, plenty of sunny spells once the morning fog clears. Cloud and rain across parts of Northern England and Northern Ireland should clear, and it should lift and break to allow some sunny spells here, but the rain continues across northwestern parts of Scotland, particularly the Highlands where it could be heavy at times. But in that sunshine, temperatures rising to around 31 Celsius in the southeast.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christie's Tonight Show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christie's Tonight to be a part of the action. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation,
no,
isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. Next month, we will celebrate 200 years since the birth of the modern railway. The Stockton and Darlington opened on the 27th of September 1825. Electrification of railways began in the late 19th century, but Britain, once the rail pioneer, has lagged behind many comparable economies. John Buxton and Don Heath have looked in particular at the 1950s, when competing factions in the industry stalled the electrification process in Britain. John Buxton joins me now. You're very, very welcome. I find this a very sad story, that we are considerably less electrified than comparable economies. Is it a sad story?
It covers the trials, tribulations, but also the triumphs of electrification in this country, because we have done some things very well. HS1, for example, I worked on that, the Channel Tunnel Rail Link, and Don Heath, my co-author, was the project director of the East Coast Main Line, the longest work site in the UK, and indeed, I think, in Europe in the 1980s. And he brought that job in on time and on budget, as indeed HS1 did. In fact, he got to Leeds a year early and saved £1 million. So we have done some things well.
That's fantastic. Let's break this down into at least two parts. So first, as it were, the decision-making side of it, and then we'll talk about implementation. So why is it that Britain has not decided to do more electrification in what I would call a timely way?
I think it's primarily because we have no strategy. We had no strategy for electrification, and that goes back right to the 1800s. And if you think that the first piece of electrification was done in 1890, the City and South London Railway, it was 1932 before the government decided that they would introduce an order to standardise the type of electrification. So we had all sorts of different schemes going on. And really, it's only been the only times when we actually had a strategy which worked was when the Southern Railway electrified lines in the 20s and 30s, and when in the 1980s, Bob Basil Reid, Bob Reid 1 as we called him, he introduced sector management, and under sector management we did 800 miles of electrification very successfully.
Was it the case that British Railways was sort of romantically connected to steam, wouldn't give up steam, and then, rather oddly, became rather infatuated with diesel as well?
Yeah, that's a point, or a number of points that we bring out in the book, actually, because there were different factions in the 1950s. Some people wanted to stick with steam and go straight to electrification. Robert Riddles, for example, he was the chief engineer. But other people thought that the infrastructure requirements were too big, and wouldn't it be better to go for diesel-electric traction and have some benefit from the electric form of power? But that was actually flawed, because the problem we've actually had, I think, in the UK is often the politicians and stakeholders feel that once we set a planning programme, in progress, that it's going to happen immediately. The modernisation plan was something like that. That came right out of the blue in the 1950s. £50 billion at today's prices was offered to the railway. They didn't obviously want to refuse it, but they had no plan. And then everybody thought that everything would be sorted out in the next 2 years, when in actual fact it was a 15-year programme.
So that's the planning side. You've talked about some successful implementations, but there have been some that have not been successful. Quite recently, the Great Western Railway, it was supposed to go as far as Oxford, it was supposed to go as far as Swansea. If I recall. Yeah. The government got exasperated and pulled the plug.
Yes, well, that's a classic case, really, of a project not going wrong, actually. It never started properly. It was a project which, again, came out of the blue. Network Rail hadn't done any research into electrification of that particular route, and the politicians wanted instant action. So they went ahead without proper estimates, without the design being undertaken, and they decided also to use a new form of electrification equipment, all of which needed testing. So the whole project became a test site as well as a development project. So
we now have things called bimodal trains, so they run electric where they can, and then they continue under their own power when there aren't overhead cables. Is that the way forward, or are we still missing the opportunity of full electric?
Full electrification brings lower costs, it brings a cleaner railway, a more sustainable railway, a more environmentally friendly railway. That's the way we need to go. Bimode trains cost a lot more to operate than electric trains. And I think the trains which have now replaced the old high-speed diesel trains on the Western region are a lot more expensive to run than any other electric trains that are straight electric rather than bimode. So it's not the way to go forward.
John, would you very kindly just lift up your book? Your book is called, and show it, there we are. Your book is called Lines of Power, and it tells the story of why we're not more electrified than we are. Thank you very much indeed, John Buxton.
Thank you.
Coming up, another infrastructure story. A bridge between Italy and Sicily has been planned for nearly 2,000 years. It's only just been approved. We'll go live to Rome to hear why the Romans didn't succeed then and how the mafia could get involved now. This is Sunday with Michael Portillo, only on GB News.
Be nice to escape the grey.
Clear skies, here we come.
As clear as our travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. The European heatwave will continue over the next few days, so some very high temperatures for many places. Lots of blue skies and sunshine, though, including the Canary Islands and Madeira, but the heat is most intense across Iberia, so Portugal and inland parts of Spain seeing temperatures into the low to mid-40s Celsius. Hot also across Italy, the Balkans, Greece and Turkey. And it's going to stay hot over the next few days as well. Lots and lots of sunshine, temperatures in the high 30s or low 40s.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Britain's Newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Now, the governing body of tennis, which is the Lawn Tennis Association, has been accused of effectively breaking the law.
Yes, that's after reports that they encouraged transgender people to participate in women's tournaments. Well, we're now joined by the former Olympic swimmer Sharon Davies to discuss this. Sharon, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Now, just bring us up to date, because the LTA, I think in January, made what could have been seen as quite a positive decision to stop trans players, trans women, so biological men, from competing against women in the elite game. But tell us what's different about the amateur game.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really important that we do use the correct language, because they're not banning anyone. They're just stopping biological males from competing against biological females. It's really that simple. And what's very frustrating is that basically they're saying, if you're really good, we're going to give you fair and safe sport. If you're not quite so good, we're not going to give you fair and safe sport. I mean, what a ludicrous situation that we're actually in. And as you say, I mean, it's been 100 days now since the Supreme Court ruling. It made it absolutely clear that a women's event means that it's a women's event only if it has biological females in it. If it has any form of man in it, no matter how they got to call themselves, what they want to wear, then it's a mixed sex event. So, you know, they're encouraging local clubs, you know, to not actually follow the law, to not give fair sport to pathways, to recreational, to juniors. You know, these people now are just expected to have unfair sport. And how do we get the elites if we don't make sure that the way forward and the way through is fair? And this is not just tennis. You know, golf is bad too. We still have 30 sports in the UK that don't protect the female category, including things like taekwondo, would you believe, and gymnastics.
GB News, the People's Channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back to Sunday with Michael Portillo. A bridge between Italy and Sicily was envisaged by the Romans. But just this week, the Italian government has approved the €13.5 billion project. There remain concerns that the money intended for the project could be siphoned off by the Cosa Nostra. Joining us now live from Rome is historian Alexander Mariotti. Alexander, it's absolutely great to see you. Tell me about the Roman plan. How did they intend to get across from the mainland to Sicily?
Well, it seems that, according to the sources, they were successful in 250 BC during the Sicilian Wars, but it was a pontoon bridge. It was a temporary bridge, and the purpose was to transport war elephants across for the Romans. Now, temporary bridge is all really they could have done, and in fact, the fact that there's no bridge today speaks to the difficulty of actually constructing it for a couple of reasons. One of the main ones is just the gale force winds that happen to pass through the Straits of Messina. Not to mention that there's an incredible amount of seismic activity that took place. So even the great engineers of the Romans who were able to build the Colosseum did not foresee a feasible bridge that could connect the two pieces of land.
Mm. Now, the seismic risk, yes, indeed. I mean, Messina was devastated in an earthquake. If I recall, at the beginning of the 20th century, you must put me right. But do we think we've dealt with the seismic risk?
Well, you're absolutely correct. The 1908 earthquake was absolutely devastating. First of all, it killed between 70 to 85,000 people, not to mention the tsunamis that it created. So there is that risk. Now, in fairness, there's bridges in Japan that are completely adept to dealing with the seismic activity. So the engineers themselves on this project are fairly confident that that's not going to be an issue. That's, of course, to be seen because the bridge itself is such a huge undertaking, and there's so many problems that it's going to encounter. The seismic activity is probably the least of the problems, honestly, when you look at the entire project as a whole.
What are the other problems that bother you?
Well, first of all, it's quite evident. We were quite successful until about the 4th century in being capable of underseeing projects and building them. We don't have a great history in Italy of fulfilling projects. I mean, you just have to look at the metro line being built in Rome, which was supposed to take 4 years to build. That was 12 years ago. They just added another 10, and I would be quite surprised if in 15 we're not still looking at the construction site that is a blight on anyone visiting the city at the moment. So there's that problem. The problem is, of course, corruption. But I mean, apart from the opposition to it, which comes from the political side, from the environmental groups, but there's the problem of the mafia. You've got the 'Ndrangheta in Calabria, the Cosa Nostra in Sicily, who, post-World War black market weapons managed to flourish quite successfully with the black market in selling weapons. And they are probably quite opposed to themselves. So there's a huge amount of corruption, bureaucracy to deal with. It's not a simple undertaking. And that's just not even taking into account the actual construction itself, the engineering that's involved in it.
One of the things that rather outraged me is I hear the proposal is that the Italians will claim that this is part of their defence budget, and so they'll notch it up as getting them towards the 5% NATO threshold.
That's completely correct, yes. Yes, they're going to pass it off as a sort of strategic military infrastructure for NATO because of the NATO base. I mean, it is, from a military point of view, it is an incredibly strategic strait. Anybody that has to pass to pass through the two seas either has to go around Sicily or through the straits. So they say that apparently for detecting submarines, it'll be absolutely vital. But again, I think that's more the government just trying to pass it through as a spending that's not going to inflame the already very temperamental political situation at the moment in Italy.
You know, it's very easy to knock infrastructure projects. I mean, actually, when I go to Italy, I'm in awe of how many tunnels and viaducts Italy has built, and the railway system is pretty good as well. Many things are delayed, many things take longer than we think, but when we eventually have them, we think, wow, what a wonderful piece of infrastructure and how much it has transformed life.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is one of the sort of positive aspects of it is, you know, when you come to Italy, you can't help but be absolutely amazed by the engineering, but also the ambition to build such things. I mean, that's what the sites of Rome really do. When you look at the Colosseum, the Pantheon, it's the ability to face something that seems near impossible and yet be able to do it. And I think we've kind of lost that spirit. But this project seems to be, that's the sort of major purpose of it, is that it is incredibly difficult. It is arduous to build it. There's a huge wave of obstacles to overcome, but there's the desire to do it, to do something magnificent. And I think we're kind of lacking that. We haven't really done anything on a level of this construction for a very long time. I actually spoke to Matteo Salvini some weeks ago at an event, and you know, we're talking about history and exactly about this, about the fact that the Romans really had an entrepreneurial spirit, but an ability to look at overcoming issues and deal with them very pragmatically. And so this project, I think, really sums up the same sort of spirit.
Alexander, very briefly, I want to touch on the Romans. Earlier, we were talking about Pliny the Elder, because it's that sort of programme. There's a story that after the destruction of Pompeii, some of the citizens went back there and lived in a sort of encampment in the ruins. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, you know, Pompeii is a constant source of just amazement. I always say that we always have to temper the fact that, you know, I've worked at Pompeii many times. I was very lucky to be there for an incredible discovery last year. And every time I'm there, I'm always taken by the fact that without Pompeii, we just wouldn't know as much about the ancient world as we do. But we also have to look at the human tragedy of it and take into account how many people lost their lives for us to learn what we do. The latest discovery is that people actually returned back to the site and lived in the higher levels of the buildings, but in a makeshift camp. So they try, you can imagine how many people displaced. I mean, Pompeii, they estimate probably 20,000 people displaced. Many, of course, lost their lives, as we know, as we see the casts of the shells of the bodies when we go visit Pompeii. And yes, they made a makeshift camp, and they were using the higher levels and then digging down as much as possible to make bakeries and ovens. But then by the 5th century, it was completely abandoned. It was a completely impossible site. Also because all the infrastructure, which of course is the important part of living in a Roman city, was completely buried by the ash and the pumice.
Yeah, when I heard this story, I didn't realise it had been for so long. So people were living there for some centuries in that makeshift way.
Yes, absolutely. And there's undergoing at the moment, there's a fascinating project that I encourage everyone to look up, where they've managed to work out from names in neighboring cities from the cemeteries that some of the people from Pompeii actually moved to the neighboring cities. So we're able to sort of work out now, using a little bit of technology and a lot of sleuthing, some of the families that managed to escape and obviously went to live in neighboring cities. But I would imagine the very poor and destitute who had lost everything would have stayed in the site and used it as a camp.
Thank you very much, Alexander, and thank you very much to all my guests today. It's been really educational to discuss a range of topics today. The programme will be back next week. Without me, I'll be back on the 24th of August. Up now, Dawn Neeson. What's on your programme, Dawn?
It's a cracking show, nearly as good as yours, Michael. Deporting foreign criminals, why the hot weather is very bad for you, and also what is very contagious. We'll be telling you soon.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
Hello there, welcome to our latest GB News weather forecast from the Met Office. It's generally clouding over across northwestern parts of the UK at the moment, some rain moving in, but elsewhere dry, and in that sunshine tomorrow it will be hot. High pressure sat to the east-south-east of us, drawing in some hot air from the near continent, but weather fronts introducing cloud and outbreaks of rain across the northwest, which you'll see through the rest of today. The rain could turn heavy at times, particularly over the higher ground, parts of western Scotland, northern England seeing some rain as we head towards the very end of the day and into the early hours. But overnight, generally England and Wales, the rest of it staying dry with some clear spells, and with light winds we could see one or two mist and fog patches forming again, and temperatures overall remaining in double figures, a little higher than the night before. So a bright start across England and Wales, some mist and fog patches first thing, but a different picture across Scotland, a cloudy grey start here for many of us, some outbreaks of rain which could be heavy at times over the Highlands. Some early rain across Northern Ireland, but breaking up to allow some sunshine to come through, and a mixed picture across northern England too. And fairly hazy sunshine across the rest of England and Wales, but as the mist and fog lifts, the skies will become blue and there'll be plenty of sunshine for the day ahead. However, there is the risk later on in the morning into the afternoon of some heavy showers and thunderstorms starting to pull in from the southwest, but most places will stay dry. Rain becoming increasingly confined to northwest Scotland as we move through the day, so a bit of a grey day here. But in the sunshine, temperatures lifting the high 20s, possibly 30, 31 Celsius towards the southeast. Into the evening time, one or two thunderstorms are possible, but most places staying dry with sunny spells, though the sunshine quite hazy across England and Wales. The rain still lingering across parts of the Highlands. And the next few days remains hot and sunny for many of us. Light winds, temperatures reaching the low, possibly mid-30s. See you soon.
Expect warm spells with the odd rude interruption. Box Boiler sponsors the weather on GB News.
We want to send some of those monthly financial stresses packing this August with your chance to be mortgage or rent-free for 12 whole months. We'll give you a cash lump sum that equals 12 of your monthly mortgage or rent payments, right up to an amazing £20,000. We'll also throw in an extra £5,000 on top of that for good measure. For another chance to win, text WIN to 63225. One entry costs £2.50 plus one standard network rate message, or text BONUS to 63225. 5 entries cost £5 plus one standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entry start at £2.50. Call 0903 686 3232. Calls cost £2.50 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB15 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 4 p.m. on the 29th of August. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Britain was once the envy of the world, but look around. A nation that no longer knows what it is or where it's going. A country that's broken. How do we fix Britain? How do we bring it back? Friday night with Matt Goodwin at 8 p.m, only on GB News.
You've read the headlines, you've heard what those in power have to say. How about now we actually get to the truth?
They would pay attention.
We go beyond the political theatre and tell you what's really going on behind the scenes. For a massive council tax hike, one of the biggest in the UK. Others follow their lines, but we go off script.
You sound like a broken record, you say that week after week.
Cutting through the narratives and giving you unique perspectives. That's Ben Leo tonight, Saturdays and Sundays from 9 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
At GB News, we love to hear from you, our loyal community. So drop us a line at gbnews.com/yoursay. There you can talk to each other and also to the presenters live on air. gbnews.com/yoursay, because GB News is your channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it?
No,
Because the failure is...
You're
the failure is...
deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff.
Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood.
So join me on Dubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Afternoon, it's 1 o'clock on Sunday, the 10th of August, and this is the weekend on GB News. Thank you so much for your company this busy Sunday lunchtime. Cracking show coming up for you. Your main stories. Will foreign criminals be sent packing? Well, that's what the Justice Secretary,